Now in this edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, we'll be taking a look at the results of, and your comments from, the poll that asked the question, what rating would you give Star Wars The Force Awakens? And before we get into it, let me just answer a question a lot of you had. Yes, I'll be doing a poll for each of the Star Wars movies, and getting a final score or average score for all of them, so that we can rank them that way. That wasn't exactly my original intent here, because I have done other polls where I compared or pitted the movies against each other to try and determine the winner, or which one you think is the best, but this way each movie can be judged separately and on its own, instead of you making pick one or another. And yeah, this is where I'll throw in my disclaimer that the only thing these polls will truly show is the collective opinion of those who watch my videos. It won't exactly give us the broader view of the whole fan base, but something tells me the only results that are likely to be skewed to any real degree here are the ones for the sequel trilogy films because, well, I'm not a huge fan of them, especially The Last Jedi. And many, though not all of you who watch my videos, probably tend to share that view. However, when it comes to the prequels and original trilogy, it feels like there's a pretty good blend of the two around here, so the results of those films should be far more accurate when compared to what a larger sampling of the fan base might show. All in all, though, this is just meant in good fun, so do keep that in mind. Oh, and before I get to the results of the poll, just know that I will be doing a full comprehensive review of The Force Awakens in a separate video that I hope to have up sometime this week, and that's mainly because I've never actually done a review of it before. I've given my brief thoughts on it in many different videos, and I'll do that again here in this video when addressing some of your comments, but I will dive much deeper into this movie in the very near future. But anyway, let's get to the results of the poll already, where we'll see that 44% of voters gave it a 3-star or an average rating, while 28% thought it was worthy of 4 stars, and a mere 4% gave it 5 stars and thought it was amazing. On the flip side then, 16% gave it 2 stars and considered it not very good, while 8% thought it was terrible. And when you do the math, we end up with a final score of 3.04 stars, which is just a couple ticks above the absolute middle of the road or completely average. And do keep in mind that since 0 stars is not an option, though some of you wanted it to be, it does mean that 3 is the median score and not 2.5. Okay, now let's move on to the comments, and I very much tried to pick some from both sides here, good and bad, as well as some that fell directly into the middle more or less, in an effort to get a wide, varying view of the movie. And as I read them, I'll briefly give some thoughts here and there, and other times I'll just read the comments. And as always, let's kick things off with the top-rated comment, which came to us from Dan Casey UM, who said, "Boring movie, practically a remake of A New Hope, but with feminist propaganda and boring flat characters." And nothing like getting right to what many, right or wrong, think is the crux of the problem with the sequel trilogy in the very first comment here, and not to get too deeply into it because I've discussed it many times before in other videos, and I really just want to discuss the movie itself here more or less, not the things around it, if you will. Anyway, I think only a very small percentage of Star Wars fans have a problem with the lead female character. And I know some of you out there will totally disagree with me, but to them I'd ask, where was the controversy around Rey before The Force Awakens came out? If gender was the key issue with her, why weren't people complaining about it before the movie came out? The simple answer is nobody cared then because they thought she'd be treated like any other character, and we can certainly debate whether or not that's been the case. However, many fans feel like there has been an effort with Rey not to just make her the next iconic character of Star Wars, but to make her an icon of sorts beyond the movies, a female icon. And one of the reasons why people don't like Rey, again, right or wrong, is it feels like this trilogy is more about promoting a gender than just telling a great story. And again, we can debate how true or not that actually is, but we cannot debate the fact that some people do indeed feel that way and don't like the films because of it. Not because they just flat out hate women, but they don't think the point of Star Wars or a Star Wars movie should be about promoting a gender. Okay, let's move on from that topic and get to this comment from Faye Brad, who said, "Look, Last Jedi may be pretty damn bad, but Force Awakens was the real crime. That movie was just A New Hope, and Starkiller Base was the worst thing in Star Wars. Oh, and the way the New Republic was handled was an utter joke. If Episode 4 would not exist, it would have been a decent but not amazing movie, but as it stands, it's terrible, for being a point-for-point retread." First of all here, I very much agree that Starkiller Base was a terrible idea. We didn't need yet another Death Star type weapon, and of all the things that makes this movie feel like a retread of A New Hope, that just might be the worst offender. Second of all, it would be curious to know what people who don't know much or anything about Star Wars thought about this movie. For someone like me who has Star Wars embedded into their very brain, I guess you could say, it's hard for me to separate it out and to just see the movie for what it is. And like Faybread says here, I guess it's a fun movie on its own, and a lot of people did comment that it's just a good movie, but a bad Star Wars movie. Okay, let's now move on to this comment from the Bros channel, who said, I'm not a sequel fanboy, but The Force Awakens was a good Star Wars flick and was exactly what we needed for our reintroduction to that galaxy far, far away. As usual, this one took risks and left us in a very intriguing cliffhanger, and also made a very risky move and killed a beloved character, which I think was a very good choice. Overall, The Force Awakens is a very nice Star Wars movie and should be given 5 stars. And as I've said before, and I'll say again here, for more casual fans, The Force Awakens is a great reintroduction. The movie is clearly meant as a welcoming back to Star Wars, and on that level, I think it works really well. However, myself and many others never went anywhere, and for us, the reintroduction wasn't needed, and something new or that progressed the story from Return of the Jedi would have been far more appreciated. That then brings us to this comment from Wesley Mead, who said, I really loved that movie. Saw it 5 times when it came out, and it really got me back in love with Star Wars. It left me wanting more, and I couldn't wait for the next movie. It's a shame the way things went. And this is why I'm mostly fine with The Force Awakens being what it is or what it was, despite wanting and expecting something different on a personal level. Again, it was a welcoming back to Star Wars, and I think it's one a lot of people really enjoyed, especially at the time. And the box office total seems to back that up. Simply put, it did what it was supposed to do. It brought a lot of people back into the fold, and at least in my case as a more hardcore fan, it offered just enough mystery about what was to come to get me hooked. And as Wesley says, and he sounds like he's more of a casual fan or was, which is fine, it got him hooked again too, and it's a shame what happened next in The Last Jedi, that they didn't do more to truly set that hook into the people who had bid again at Star Wars, whether they be hardcore or casual fan. That then brings us to this comment from the Luckless Lime, who said, let's face it, ask this in 2016, and you would have many, many more who would rate it 4 stars or above. And now I'll read off some of the comments, though certainly not all of them because there were a lot, that very much agree with that last statement, starting with this one from JBO Bob Pants, who said, when it first came out, I would have given it at least 4 to 5 stars, but after The Last Jedi, it's down to about 2 stars. I've never had a movie retroactively go back and ruin my enjoyment for another movie, but The Last Jedi did that. One of the best things about The Force Awakens was the mystery of where everything was heading, but now that we know and are disappointed about the answers, it's basically just a clone of A New Hope, but worse. Why watch The Force Awakens when you can just watch A New Hope instead? Then there's this comment from James Crichton, who said, I thought it was good, saw it 3 times in the theater, it's not perfect by a long shot, but for me, it only really falls apart when you know what comes in The Last Jedi. Next up then this comment from Josh Hilfer, who said, it's a good movie, people just crap on it because of The Last Jedi, which is stupid. We as a community should judge movies as their own and on their own merit, not clump it into a category of controversy it doesn't deserve. It's a fun Star Wars movie that balances the introduction of new characters and the reintroduction to old characters, along with a reintroduction to the world perfectly. Then this comment from Rob V. Hiley, who said, I would have originally given it a 4, but because of The Last Jedi, I now rate The Force Awakens a 2. Then this comment from Delboy Kenobi, who said, 4 stars in isolation from The Last Jedi. Next, this comment from Sean Ward Life, who said, I loved it and thought Disney was really onto something kicking off this era of Star Wars. Then The Last Jedi proved that my faith was misplaced. Then finally in this little string of comments, we have this one from Greg Howard, who said, had they actually followed through with everything they set up in a compelling way, I'd probably feel better about it. I felt good about it at first, up until The Last Jedi release. And when you consider just how many people left comments like these, again, I read just a small number of them, I think what happened here is they got a lot of people back on the line with The Force Awakens. A lot of people came back to the franchise after not thinking about it since probably the prequels. And then after The Last Jedi, a lot of them shrugged their shoulders at it or flat out hated it, and they just left again. You had the perfect reintroduction with The Force Awakens, then chased so many away with the subverted expectations of The Last Jedi, and it's a real shame. Okay, let's get to a few more comments here before wrapping this up. Starting with this one from Joe Agnew, who said, basically terrible cosplay of A New Hope. Light speeding into a planet and being able to pull up from the ground in time. What? And I do agree with him here, and it actually might be the most ridiculous thing in all of Star Wars when you really stop and think about it, yet very few people ever complain about it. And that is that Han can manually come out of hyperspace beyond the shield, yet before crashing into the planet, and then pull up in time to save them all. It's just flat out silly when you consider the speeds involved in the small window to work with. I'd guess there's no way a computer could even pull it off, much less a human being prompted by a computer about when to come out of hyperspace which is what happens in the film. Anyway, let's move on to this comment from Churn Blanston, who said, "The Force Awakens did everything it needed to do and exceeded my most optimistic expectations. I think the soft reboot concept was a brilliant move to cross the generational gap from the old to the new. They even handled Kylo in a brilliant way, recognizing that he doesn't feel he can fill Vader's boots, because he can't, but that gives him his own space to be a great and different kind of villain in his own right." Then we go to the opposite extreme with this comment from Fran A. Jen, who said, "God awful. How can people rate it 3 stars and beyond is baffling to me. The whole movie was almost a carbon copy of A New Hope, only with lamer characters, even worse, tarnishing the old characters and their accomplishments. All in all, an uninspiring mess of a movie. And no, my view hasn't changed after The Last Jedi. I thought this the second I got out of the theater. Just disappointment." Then finally hear this comment from Samford Magnus, who said, 4 stars. It ain't amazingly breathtaking, but it was well worth watching and a good kickoff for the new trilogy, which I personally don't have major issues with, just minor complaints here and there. And so in closing here, just like with damn near everything else in life, opinions vary and nobody is right and nobody is wrong here about this movie. But when we look at the overall score, it falls almost in the very middle with that 3.04 I mentioned before. And I do agree with a lot of the people who said that if this poll had been done shortly after the movie came out, the numbers here would be much, much higher. Because yeah, I do think a lot of the hardcore fans were more forgiving of The Force Awakens when they thought that what came next would be building off these mysteries we just got. And I think there were more casual fans back in full force at that time, who have since left after The Last Jedi. And no, I'm certainly not saying everyone loved or accepted it right when it first came out, because it certainly had its fair share of naysayers even then. But any and all forgiveness most of those people had for it ran out after The Last Jedi. And fair or not, people's view on it has certainly been influenced by its context in this new trilogy and the overall saga. And now, most just see it as an average movie, it seems. Well, that's all I've got for this time. And if you're watching this now, it means the poll for episode 1 is already up, so feel free to vote and leave your thoughts about that movie there. And a link to it will be in the description below. Or, of course, feel free to tell me what you thought about this video, or The Force Awakens, and the results of this poll. Either way, leave a comment below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.